Nigeria's creative industry stakeholders are calling on the federal government to match its promises with action. It comes after the government announced plans to grow the nation's creative economy to over $100 billion by 2030. The roadmap will also see the federal government increase the budget for the Ministry of Arts, Culture and Creative Economy by 400%. Arise News senior correspondent Ferdinand Duroa reports.
A Grammy Award and several international nominations, a fledgling movie industry and numerous literary and arts awards suggests that Nigerian creatives are very talented and have huge potentials. Sadly, these potentials are often underutilized due to challenges like inadequate financial support and theft of literary property. It is for this reason that the Federal Ministry of Arts, Culture and Creative Economy is convening this roundtable. The forum, which is the first organized for members of the creative industry by this administration, is attracting critical players in the creative economy. Minister of Arts, Culture and Creative Economy says the objective is to articulate a vibrant roadmap to ensure the creative industry is able to generate more than 100 billion naira by 2030.
We have developed an extremely robust economic plan aimed at creating millions and millions of jobs, supported by comprehensive skills training programs. Our objective is to contribute 10% of the nation's GDP, expanding the sectorial GDP to a remarkable 100 billion by the year 2030.
Eulogizing members of the creative industry for their achievements globally, Vice President of Nigeria apologizes that the nation has failed to support, utilize and help them maximize their potentials. This is why the federal government is asking the Ministry of Budget to jack up the budget for the Ministry of Arts and Culture for the fiscal year 2024.
Finally, I also call on the gentleman seated here, the Honorable Minister of Economic Planning, to kindly jack up, quadruple the budget for the Ministry of Arts, Culture and Creative Economy. We are going to walk the talk. This is not empty verbosity. We will support you. We will create the enabling environment for you to excel.
Some of the stakeholders suggest ways to help Nigeria's creative industry achieve its potentials.
The creative sector had gotten to the step that it got to without the kind of support that the government should have given it. A sector where you have the players inside galvanizing and inspiring economic indices.
Okay, I think it's a good one. It's a very good one to sit down. I know there will still be more meetings like this. Sit down and see how they can grow the economy, through the creative industry. So I think it's a wonderful one.
It's a very good and creative space, and I like how the government is getting more involved in the creative sector, which has hugely will impact and make a lot of changes in the creative sector.
This is not the first time that the federal government is promising to develop the creative industry. In 2013, former President Goodluck Jonathan announced a 3 billion naira package to help turn around Nigeria's movie industry, Nollywood. 10 years later, very few persons were able to access the funds. While the unveiling of the roadmap is a laudable idea, much more is expected of the federal government to ensure that the creative industry reaches its potential. Ferdinand Duroha, Arise News.
Joining us now is Faiz Imam, Principal Advisor to Nigeria's Minister of Arts, Culture and Creative Economy. Good morning, Faiz Imam. Good to see you again. You were on this show yesterday, but we didn't have enough time, to dig deeper into the issues. One of the issues I raised yesterday was about policy. I understand all these economic plans, intellectual property rights, regulatory and intellectual property rights issues, being, a subject area expert myself. But I'm more interested in policy. You didn't quite answer that question yesterday. In 1986 or thereabouts, I took a course in cultural administration at the University of Ibadan, THA 762. I was the only student in that course. In those days when universities, even if you were the only student, the lecturer would teach you. Even if you are half a person in the class, it was his job to teach. Not today, that lecturers run away from a one-student class. And one of the assignments that Dr. Maloma, who was my teacher, gave was to study the cultural policies of different countries and try to argue for Nigeria. Since that 1986-87, we don't have cultural policy in Nigeria. In 2010, there was a stakeholder summit where stakeholders made specific recommendations as to cultural policy. How can we proceed with all these roadmap plans that have been defined without a policy? As the ministry considered that the starting point should be a cultural policy, which will deal with all issues about accountability, responsibilities, taxation, and rules.
Good morning.
Good morning,
Dr. Abati. Thank you very much for having me back here again today. It's this is an extension. We see this as an extension of our stakeholder engagement. You, the hosts, are voices of the people. And like you said, you are a subject matter expert, and the show allows people to listen to the plans that we have put in place, and through this show share their feedback. I mean, yesterday after the show we got some very, very constructive input. There's always some noise and some detraction, but the majority is very positive. So thank you for giving us this platform to engage with you, to discuss, to listen, and to go back and improve the things that we're doing. Yes, as far as policy is concerned, I talked about it a little bit yesterday. Maybe because of the timing, it didn't come through, or we rushed through it. But the critical, policy is absolutely critical to what we're doing, policy and regulation. We have a very internally, we have a very strong team led by somebody who is an expert in policy, Olamide Dauda. She is supported by the NESG, and they are reviewing. The cultural policy is part of what they're reviewing. But it's not just the cultural policy, it's the IP policy, it's also the creative economy bill as a whole. So all of this is in process. It started at the last NESG summit. Once they have a zero draft, they will prepare to start the engagement process, engage people like yourselves, have roundtables specifically on the policies, make sure that it is something that reflects the view of the majority, it has the input of experts, and is adapted to today. A lot of things have happened around the world, since the last, like you rightly mentioned, the last time the government looked at it, the world is much more globalized. There's a lot more drive to collaborate culturally. So all of these things will be taken into account, and they are really foundational to what we're doing. Absolutely foundational to what we're doing.
Okay, so like I asked yesterday, I want facts. I want nitty-gritty. I would have rather a real fact on the table exposition rather than, just conversations and all of that. Now that you're saying that you're still trying to draft your cultural policy, what will be the timeline of completion of this draft? What will be the implementation plan? What are the on-ground parameters and facts on ground? As we speak, what are the various areas of cultural interaction you've mapped out? Straight off the bat, let me even ask you, how many film producers do we even have in Nigeria as we speak? How many film producers? How many film actors? How many sculptors? How many painters? How many artists? What is the asset base of talent as we speak on ground? How many musicians? Let's even start with the asset base of talent. Because to just get to 10% of GDP is very esoteric. Break it down, concrete fact, granular.
Thank you very much, Rufai, for your very excellent point. So, I think again, I mentioned yesterday, what we have done from inception to today is to put together a roadmap from now till 2030. That roadmap consists of actionable initiatives that we are now putting together a PMO, basically, to start to implement. If you're fighting a war, you need a strategy. This is economic war, and we have a broad strategy. We are looking for input into the strategy, but at the same time, we are beginning to implement. One of the foundational initiatives that we have in our strategy is to do what you've said. Your point is correct. We do not know how many artists we have. We don't know how many magicians exist. We go to where the database of the country is. That's the National Bureau of Statistics. Our plans so far are based on what we have seen within the National Bureau of Statistics. But we can see discrepancies. Yesterday, I think Ruben mentioned 2.5%, which he said was the Q3 performance of the sector. We are working with 1% because we worked with what we have from 2022. We wanted to see an annual. But what we are doing is we are now collaborating with the MBS to acquire all the statistics that you mentioned. Because, foundationally, it is clear to anybody who is serious that to develop a plan that will be effective, you need to have data, you need to have clarity on the constituency, all the things that you mentioned. But we cannot do that in 2 months. First we need to understand, is the data available? Now we understand that it's not. The MBS and the chief statistician, we had a meeting with them 2 days ago. We presented what we have, and they have been extremely supportive, extremely helpful, and have agreed to collaborate with us extensively to define the space, not just by the parameters that you see today in the CBN's reporting. CBN's reporting today has video games, it has visual arts, it has culture and heritage, and 2 other, different categories. We have broken down the sector into 12 independent spaces. We have books and literature, we have culinary arts, we have architecture and design, we have visual arts, we have gaming. Nobody knows the amount of young people today who are content creators. Nobody knows the amount of people who are in the gaming space. We need to find that out. As we speak today, the Honorable Minister has a stakeholder engagement, with a gaming community, content community, animation community in Lagos to understand, who they are, what they want, and all these aspirations. So we take the point on board, And I think, again, like I say, it's an excellent point, Rufai, and I can only provide you with the reassurance that, as a minimum, what we want is a database that is comparable or better than EFINA, which was something that defined, the payment space completely. It redefined that. We want something better that will provide clarity to us in our strategies, and it will also provide clarity to investors who want to come in and invest, but they need to understand, what is the state of play. So we're clear on this, and we put our hands up. We don't know, but we will know by God's grace.
Okay, Faiz, let me ask you. The ministry held a stakeholders forum recently. The report by our correspondent showed quite a number of people there. How inclusive was that stakeholder participation in the process? Because, I bring that up, because within the industry, there have been many people complaining that the ministry over the years, not just under this government, tends to just focus on a number of people within the industry who seem to have hijacked the ministry in terms of access, and that a lot of people are excluded, particularly people in the plastic and emerging arts, people in fashion industry, people in book reading culture, people in hospitality. So tell us, how inclusive was this event you heard a few days ago, and would there be a follow-up stakeholders consultative forum so that other stakeholders can feel a sense of belonging?
Thank you very much. Again, a very good point, which a number of people voiced out there, and we took note of that. We're very cognizant of this. It was an initial stakeholder session, which will be the first of many engagement sessions. We intend to have engagement sessions around the country. Look, let me take, like today, like I said, the minister today is meeting with the gaming, content creation and animation community in Lagos. It's a very small subset. People don't necessarily recognize it as part of the creative space, but it is. And we're looking at that. Let's take fashion. When people think about fashion, they think about Lagos Fashion Week, which is legitimate because that is, the poster child. And Omoyemi Akerele and her team are doing a wonderful thing. And we will support them, and we will certainly promote what they're doing. But we will also dig deeper to understand, where is the rest of the numbers, where the rest of the numbers today that MBS is carrying, where does it come from? It shows a couple of million people engaged in that space. Where are they? What do they need from us? How can we, promote what they're doing? A tailor who is, practicing his trade somewhere that is not a place that the Financial Times will put on its front cover is still a creator to us, and that is the base of the pyramid. So we intend to certainly look at that. We intend to engage with that, and we're open to suggestions on how best to make sure that we are inclusive. But I think the first step in addressing these kinds of issues is to recognize that the issues exist. And we have recognized that, and we intend to be inclusive. And we know that, you can't move from $5 billion to $100 billion by engaging a huge set of or a top tier. One of the things that was in our presentation, which I think many people didn't notice, but we have an express anti-monopoly initiative that we're working on, and we intend to work on clearly. I mean, this is one of the benefits of working with, global firms like EY and co that have done this across the world. I mean, they're deploying this in the MENA region, and they have seen they know how to devise strategies to address this, and we will certainly do that. In terms of the broad cross sections, like I said to you, we have divided our constituency into 12 or 13 different parts so that nobody is left out. It's not just about music and fashion. It's about books and literature. It's about architecture and design. Maybe your correspondent didn't see it, but Titi Ogunfere, who is a very prominent person in the design world, she made a comment that day about how she felt that design wasn't reflected in the things that we were doing and in our presentations, and we took note of that, and we will make sure that we address design, because design is a very significant part of the creative economy.
Okay, so let's talk about overlaps. Definitely, there's no how you're not going to have overlaps with tourism. How are you smoothing things as regards those overlaps? Also, there's no how you're not going to have overlaps with Ministry of, Communication and Tech. Because take, for instance, not only creative arts any longer, art has gone NFT now. You have arts that are coded as NFT and sold. There's no how you're not going to have overlaps, with housing, for instance, works and housing. And you talked about architecture and all of that. So how are you going to work through those overlaps? Because it's not just, culture is very broad, so it has to have like a symbiotic relationship with all of these overlap ministries here and there.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rufai. Again, it's an excellent point. And like I said earlier, this is why we're here, to have these conversations. So you are 100% correct, 100% correct. There is extensive overlap. And what I will do is, just to highlight to you that we recognize this and we're doing things about it, I will use specific initiatives that we are looking to deploy, where we will be collaborating with the different MDAs in the country. We at the ministerial retreat, the theme was about collaboration. So we know that to achieve 100 billion, you have to recognize that there is a macroeconomic issue, and you can never do it in isolation. Let's start by, the most significant of our tech initiatives, which is delivering connectivity to the young creators in our space. This is a major issue for them. But connectivity is firmly under the digital economy. So we will work with the Honorable Minister there and his team to talk about how we can deliver data to the young creators in our space. It's critical. In fact, we're adopting his 3MTT plan in terms of his deployment. I mentioned that at the retreat. He has a 1-10-100 strategy, which is excellent, and we're going to deploy that. Let's take incentives. Lots of people want to come in and they want to invest in Nigeria. They want to invest in the creative space, but they're looking for incentives, and we will represent them in our engagements with the Federal Ministry of Trade and Investment, express their position, ask for support. Outside of the MDAs, the presidency, the Office of the Vice Presidency is supporting us and collaborating with us. There, the SA to the VP, Fego, has been very supportive, and together we're developing a program to deliver a marketplace to our marketplace. Yeah, sorry.
Faiz Imam,
speaking?
Okay, I get your point. We're trying to manage time. Now, all these
go ahead.
All these plans, this roadmap, we can't put them into action if the parastatals are not working. What is the state of the parastatals in the Ministry of Arts, Culture and Creative Economy? The National Council on Arts and Culture, the National Agency for Museums and Monuments, the National Theatre, all these agencies, they just look like they are already more or less moribund. They are like the refineries. They are not productive. What is the minister going to do about those parastatals? that are more or less dead?
Okay, thank you very much. Again, a very good point. First thing that the minister is doing is to review the parastatals themselves, review their mandates, and to establish really, is this an efficient structure? The minister has commissioned and has received now an organizational structure and operational model that reflects one of the best structures in the world, which is the Korean structure. I'm sure you're very aware of the Hallyu and how Korea has created an amazing creative economy through a very, very robust structure. That is the first thing, to understand there's too much overlap, there's inefficiencies, so we have a structure. Now it's time to start implementing by investing in the people, in training people, and in giving them clear and measurable, targets that are consistent with the KPIs of the ministry. I'll take the national troop, for example. The national troop is imagined to be, something that focuses purely on cultural dances. It should be dealing with, the performing arts. It should be putting on concerts all across the world. So the minister will have first a rebrand so that people understand what that particular agency is supposed to do. The minister will invest in that particular agency and make sure that they are supported, they are properly supported to deliver on their mandate. And that cuts across every single one of them. If I can quickly mention the National Council for Museums, the minister is going to do an audit on there and essentially equip them so that they are able to transform museums either through going into PPP structures or other means, to create things that rival the J.K. Randall Center for Yoruba Culture in Lagos, modern places that people want to go, people want to visit. So this is central. It's very clear that, this has to be delivered. The agenda has to be delivered by the agencies, not the ministries. The ministry is working on policy, and there's complete focus in turning that around. But it's all being done in parallel. The delivery unit will start the delivery while the agencies are being restructured, being brought up to speed, being invested in, so that they can ultimately, long-term, deliver on the mandates.
Well, thank you very much, Faiz Imam. Thank you very much.